Have you ever had your family treat your no like it was just a suggestion? Like your boundaries were just a minor inconvenience in their master plan? If you've been there, you know that sick feeling in your stomach when you realize the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones trying to take everything you've built. My name is Myra. I'm 34, and last Tuesday, I came home from work to find a 14-foot moving truck parked in my driveway. My parents were standing on my front lawn like they were the welcoming committee for a house I bought with my own blood, sweat, and tears. My mother looked me right in the eye, loud enough for the whole street to hear, and said, "He has children, Myra. You're single. You don't need all this space." She said it with this terrifying calmness, like it was already settled. Like I was just a tenant in my own life, and they decided not to renew my lease. My father stood behind her with his arms crossed, nodding along, while my brother Kyle started carrying boxes toward my front door. What they didn't realize is that I have security cameras, and those cameras had been recording everything they did while I was at work. If you love stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed. We post new ones every week, and you don't want to miss them. All right, let's get into it. To understand how we got to this standoff, you have to understand the years of quiet resentment that built the foundation of this house. I started at Morrison and Hale Construction the summer after college. I was 22 years old, wearing steel-toed boots that gave me blisters for the first 3 months and a hard hat 2 sizes too big. I was a junior site engineer, the lowest rung on the ladder. 8 years later, I was a project manager running commercial builds across 2 counties. I earned that title the same way I earned everything else in my life, by showing up, staying late, and never once asking my family for a single dollar. The house was a 3-bedroom Cape Cod on Maple Lane. White siding, black shutters, and a porch that wrapped around the left side. I put down $44,000 in cash, 20% of the price, from savings I'd built since my very first paycheck. The mortgage was mine. The insurance was mine. Every single payment came from my account and my account alone. The day I signed the deed, I sat in my car and called my parents, my hands still shaking with the weight of the pen. "Mom, I bought a house," I whispered. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "That's nice, honey. Kyle's having a rough time with Heather. You know, we're worried about the kids." The ink on my signature wasn't even dry, and already I'd been shuffled aside. My parents never visited. They never saw the porch I repainted or the garden I built along the back fence. But they knew exactly how many bedrooms it had. They always knew that. My brother Kyle is 4 years older than me, but growing up, that gap felt like 40. Kyle got the first car, paid for by Dad. Kyle's first apartment? Dad covered the deposit and the first 3 months of rent. When I graduated, Dad told me, "You're smart, Myra, you'll figure it out." And I did figure it out. That was the problem. Every time I handled things on my own, it confirmed their belief that I didn't need help, while Kyle drifted from job to job, blaming a rigged system for his own laziness. 2 weeks ago, my mother called me on a Wednesday evening. I was scraping paint off the bathroom window frame when she said those 4 words that never lead to anything good. "We've been thinking." She told me Kyle needed a place because my father's back couldn't handle him sleeping on the couch anymore. She said, "Your house has 3 bedrooms and it's just you. It makes sense." I set the paint scraper down, my heart pounding against my ribs. "No, Mom, that's my house." The guilt trip started instantly. She asked if I'd let my niece and nephew be homeless, even though they lived with their mother. Then my father's voice came through, deeper and harder. "Don't be selfish, Myra. Family helps family." I told them I wasn't giving away my house, and the line went dead. No goodbye. Just a dial tone that felt like a slap in the face. A week passed with total silence. In my family, silence isn't peace. It's reconnaissance. On Thursday afternoon, while I was sitting in a project meeting 15 miles away, my phone lit up. "Motion detected at front door." I couldn't check it until the meeting ended 40 minutes later. When I finally opened the app in the parking lot, My knuckles turned white, gripping the steering wheel. The footage showed Kyle standing on my porch, looking over his shoulder like a thief. Then, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a key. My spare key. The one I gave my parents for emergencies. He slid it into the lock and walked into my house like he was shopping for curtains. I watched 12 minutes of footage as my brother moved through every room, opening my closets, checking the water pressure, and filming the master bedroom with his phone. He was taking inventory of my life. I called my mother that night, skipping the small talk. "Did you give Kyle my spare key?" She didn't even hesitate. "He wanted to see if the house would work for the kids." "You're being dramatic, Myra." My father shouted in the background, "Just let him look, for God's sake." They had already decided. They were just waiting for me to get out of the way. I didn't change the locks that night. Part of me wanted to see exactly how far they were willing to go. The next Thursday, it happened again. This time, I watched the live feed from a construction site. All three of them, Mom, Dad, and Kyle, were on my porch. My father unlocked the door, and they marched inside. The interior camera picked up Kyle kneeling at the front door with a screwdriver and a brand new lock set from the hardware store. He was removing my deadbolt and replacing it with a cheap brass knob, while my father supervised like it was a weekend DIY project. My mother moved through the house with a cardboard box, pulling out a stuffed bear and a dinosaur blanket. She arranged them in my guest room, setting up a nursery in a house she didn't own. I stood there on that dusty construction site, watching my family colonize my home in real time. My hands were shaking, but my mind was perfectly clear. I screenshotted every frame. I saved every second of the footage to 3 different cloud drives. I went next door to my neighbor Janet, a retired real estate attorney. She watched the footage twice without saying a word, then looked at me over her glasses. "This is criminal trespass, Myra. Love doesn't come with a right to your door locks." She told me to call a locksmith and file a trespass warning. She reminded me that in a town the size of Ridgewood, public record means everyone knows the truth. The locksmith arrived at 7:30. Mike, a guy I'd worked with on professional builds, didn't ask questions. He just swapped the brass junk Kyle installed for heavy-duty, high-security deadbolts. I found the box of children's things in my guest room. I didn't throw them away. I wasn't angry at the kids. I carried them to the garage and set them on the workbench. Then I sat on my porch in the dark and listened to the audio from the hallway camera one more time. My mother's voice was faint, but I heard it. "She'll get over it. She always does." That sentence broke something inside me that can never be fixed. Friday morning, the family group chat exploded. My mother sent a message to 13 relatives. "Please pray for our family. Myra is refusing to help her brother in his time of need." We asked her with love, and she responded with selfishness. The replies poured in from aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, all of them judging me from their own living rooms. Kyle texted me directly. "Come on, Myra, it's just a house." Just a house. 8 years of 80-hour weeks, every dollar tracked, every sacrifice weighed. To them, my life was just an extra room for the golden sun. Then came the final message from Mom. "We're coming over Saturday with the moving truck. This is happening whether Myra likes it or not." Saturday morning at 9:02, I heard the low, grinding rumble of a U-Haul engine turning onto Maple Lane. Then the hiss of air brakes. A 14-foot box truck pulled up to my curb, followed by my father's Ford truck. Kyle climbed out and rolled up the back gate, revealing an entire household of furniture. My father walked toward my porch with the posture of a king. "All right, Myra, let's not make this difficult," he said. Down the street, Janet was watching from her driveway. Across the way, Mrs. Henderson was frozen with her mail. My mother stepped out of the truck and straightened her jacket. She walked to the center of my lawn and spoke in that church voice that's designed to be overheard. "Myra, don't embarrass yourself. He has children. You're alone. This house is wasted on you. Wasted." The word landed like a physical blow to the stomach. Not underused. Not extra. wasted. As if my existence, my career, and my peace meant nothing because I hadn't produced grandchildren. My father walked up the path and stood next to her. "We raised you. We gave you everything. This is the least you can do." I stood up slowly and walked down the porch steps. I stopped 6 feet from them, close enough to see the sweat on Kyle's forehead. "This is my house," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My name is on the deed. Not one person in this family contributed a single dollar to this property." My father's jaw tightened. "Don't you disrespect us. Respect is a two-way street, Dad, and you just drove a moving truck to my house without my permission." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key Kyle had installed. He marched past me to the door and jammed it in. He turned it. Nothing. He tried again, harder this time. Kyle jogged up behind him, pulling out his own key. They both stood there, fumbling with the lock like two men trying to break into a vault. "Myra, you changed the locks," Dad growled, spinning around. "I changed them back after your son broke in and changed them last Thursday." The air went still. Kyle's hand dropped to his side. My father's face cycled through confusion and recognition before settling on a look of pure, cold fear. My mother, still standing on the lawn, shouted, "What are you talking about?" "It's on camera, Mom. Every second of it. I watched you put the dinosaur blanket in my guest room while I was at work." I pulled my phone from my back pocket and dialed 911. I didn't hesitate. I gave the operator my address and told her 3 individuals were trespassing on my property and refusing to leave. My mother started crying instantly. The full, loud, theatrical performance. She clutched Mrs. Henderson's fence and sobbed about how I was kicking out her grandchildren. Kyle was screaming into his phone to Aunt Linda, trying to rally the family against me. But then Janet stepped across the low fence between our yards. "Donna, I saw everything," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Last week, you told me Myra agreed to this. You lied to my face." The cruiser pulled up at 9:24. Officer Reeves surveyed the U-Haul, the crying mother, and the 2 men hovering over my door. I handed her my deed and my ID. My father tried to explain it away as a family misunderstanding, but the officer wasn't interested in his excuses. She looked at the footage on my phone, the clear video of Kyle unscrewing my deadbolt, and her eyes went cold. She turned to my brother. "You have 10 minutes to get that truck off this street, or I'm impounding it and taking all 3 of you to the station for criminal trespass." I watched them scramble. I watched my father's pride shatter as he had to help Kyle reload the boxes they dropped on the sidewalk. My mother didn't look at me once. She just climbed into the truck and stared straight ahead. As the U-Haul pulled away, the silence on Maple Lane was heavier than any engine noise. The family group chat is a graveyard now. I've been called a monster, a traitor, and dead to the family. But for the first time in 34 years, I slept through the night. I realized that the people who love you don't need a court order to respect your front door. If they don't respect your no, they don't respect you. And I'm finally okay with being alone in a house that actually belongs to me. My home is finally quiet, and it's finally safe. What would you have done in Myra's place? Let me know in the comments. If this story hit home, share it and subscribe. We post new stories every week.